Okay, so my talk for today is about uh, architecting governments. What can we learn from the world's #1 digital governments? Just to give you guys a little bit of introduction on my experience working with governments. I've been lucky to have the opportunity to support the Philippine government as initially as a DSWD volunteer many years ago. I've also gotten the opportunity to consult for DENR in creating their first EA plan. Also working for BCDA, the Department of Health, the Supreme Court, the DICT, and have been a member of the Health Enterprise Architecture Group, and now co-chairing the data governance sub-working group of the IATF ICT Technical Working Group together with the CIO of Department of Health. I've also had a chance to join and for a short while lead the e-government working group of the Open Group organization. This is an organization with around 600 members globally, 600 company organizations and educational institutions members globally, who are actually working towards standards, no? And so in that group, we had members from Canada, from the US, and from India, sharing amongst ourselves, right? What are the standards that we can actually bring forward to our governments, to our respective governments? Okay. So allow me please a slide to just share a little bit about the company that we're working with and what we're standing for. So for us, and we'd like to invite everyone to stand for a world in which our governments, our educational institutions, and our industries are providing the highest levels of service to our, to our stakeholders and to our customers by the use of leapfrogging of technology, collaborative processes, and highly motivated workforce, so that we're able to actually improve the lives of the people on Earth. So this is what we believe in our day-to-day approaches. Before I get to the main dish and to share with you some of the insights and curated information I've worked with over the years with regards to the #1 digital governments, let me offer you first 3 appetizers that I believe will make a difference in having you lead your own organizations, go through the successful digitalization. This is especially appropriate for large and mega-sized organizations. As you will see later in the government example, a lot of these principles will be practiced there. Okay, first of all, I want to share with you a book published in 2006 by 2 MIT and 1 IMD professor coming out of a 10-year research that they did of 456 companies. As a matter of fact, a lot of us in the enterprise architecture world consider this our Bible. So they were studying organizations that were going through IT transformations, and it's many names, no? Nandyan yung enterprise system implementation. Then they start calling it e-business. Then they started calling it digital business, and now they're calling it digital transformation. So the professors actually later called it enterprise architecture, and they further asserted that this enterprise architecture boils down to these 2 concepts that you will see on the screen. One is on business process standardization, and this is really about standardizing the way we do things, bringing flexibility to more organizations, and making sure that the way we do things is the same everywhere else. That way we can scale easily. The second one is what we're calling the business process integration. And this concept is really all about being able to link the effort of various organizational units through shared data, enabling it through an end-to-end transaction. So, syempre, the benefit of this is being able to allow for transparency, collaboration, and even efficiency. However, this is also hard work because now you have to coordinate among a bigger set of stakeholders with regards to having standard definitions of data, having global owners of data, and the process to make sure that they're all aligned and they're following everything to the letter. Otherwise, the entire thing will fail. So while they are both part of business processes, they do have different demands. And so when you're in your organization and you're thinking to yourself, what do we need to integrate? What do we need to standardize? We need to decide on those separately. And you really need to think about what is the intention of the business while are we doing that? So if you think about these two, we can actually put them in a matrix. And in that matrix, you will be able to create 4 quadrants. Quadrant number 1 is this at the lower left is diversification. Being able to support multiple units of your business that may not have any shared customer, any shared citizen, any shared data, and yet needing to still work together because they're part of the same whole. They have the same stakeholders, maybe the same bosses and the same concerns. So you could see that as a country like the Philippines, we are in a diversified state as a country because we have different areas of the government, from local government to national government to environment to health and others. On the other side of it, you have your replicate. So in this replicate area, here on the right, lower right, imagine Jollibee stores, Jollibee branch operations, where we are actually, we're actually replicating the same process everywhere. And you can imagine there are some benefits to that as well. And as an IT organization, if you are an IT organization in that particular structure, your job is to make sure that there are standard infrastructure and standard applications that are being used by the entire organization for global efficiency. On the upper left, coordination, this is where we're actually integrating some of our data, so such that the data that we have across different elements of our business are actually shared. So an example of this is when we're actually going to a bank, and the particular person in the teller actually knows that we actually took a loan because the data that we have is actually integrated across their departments. And as an IT organization, if your business is going through a coordination or is in coordination, it is very important that you look at how can I provide standard technology interfaces so that I can allow for shared data. Finally, if you're in unification where you're looking for high standardization and high integration, and we see this a lot in our organizations when they create shared services for finance, create shared services for HR, or even IT. In here, we deploy enterprise systems to reinforce the standard processes and ensure that there's also global data access for that particular information. So know that getting from one area to the other is very, very risky. It costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of time. So you will really need to study this. Is this really where you need to go when you're going through any of your transformation? As you will see later with our case studies, there was a lot of deliberate effort as well from them to focus on what does it mean and what does it take to actually go from one to the other. My experience of working with the Open Group, I've noticed that almost all government agencies are actually going from the lower quadrant to the upper quadrant. They're actually working for more integrations of their data to better serve their customers and their citizens. Okay. The second appetizer I'd like to share with you is what we're calling the implementation methodology. Now, at the end of the day, what you want is to achieve your organization's goals on why we even wanted to go digital. Why do we even want to actually go through this risky, sometimes very, very tiring effort to actually digitalize our processes and our way of doing things? And so make sure that as we do that, we have the goals clear to us in terms of what we actually want to do. For a few of us who have been given the opportunity to help out with the COVID battle, it's always top of our heads and our minds, the goal of flattening the curve as soon as possible. And so we use that as a way to decide what the priorities are, what the urgencies are. For most of us, the goal could be clear: increasing customer satisfaction, increasing total shareholder return, driving profits or sales, or even commanding better share of our markets. So whatever it is, be sure that you're very clear and everyone is clear what that goal is, because per stakeholder, it could actually be different. And so for this goal to be met, you need to make sure that your stakeholders are ready to adopt, you have an efficient and, dare I say, documented processes, and you use technology that is easy to use, secure, aligns with the operating model I presented earlier in the slides. So there are 6 key areas that we need to work on to ensure that this will happen. No? Communication planning, value creation planning, user-driven change management approach, understanding the end-to-end processes up to the lowest levels to support compliance also of our users, having data that is actually useful in systems that are fully tested and thought of will also help. So these are some of the things that are important to consider and think about as you're going through your transformation journey. And as we think about these government entities that we're going to be looking at later on how they were able to massively change their capabilities for millions and millions of people. So I invite you to actually use some of these frameworks so that you can actually generate more trust and transparency on the process you're going to be driving to your stakeholders as you take them through that very important but dangerous path to digitalization. The third tool I want to share, well, actually, I just want to do a double click, particularly on this user insights. No, the hardest by far for large organizations, including government, is to change the behavior. No, what we're calling change management. And there are best practices in managing this. Let me just share one that I think deserves its own page. So capturing user insights on the field to know to get their thoughts about the e-services that we are about to provide is important, but also going beyond their thoughts is actually going to be important as well. We need to go down to what they feel, what they're going through, how is this service helping them, what is in their gut that you need to communicate about your service to make a shift in their behavior. Without this insight, it's very difficult to actually understand and shift behavior for millions or for thousands, or for hundreds of our citizens, customers, users, and stakeholders. The UK government did just this, They fell in line with their citizens while they're falling in line to get services from the government at the beginning. They listened to their opinion and they showed them that their systems and captured their feedback as well to support the communication that they were going to do later on. Here's the gold, guys, here's the gold that I want to share to everybody about this, is when you do this, you go there with a mindset that I am going to learn. I'm not there to debate. I'm not there to be right. I'm not there to feel good. I need to take it all in, the good, the bad, and all the other feedback that may be given to me, even the body languages. Because when they say your services suck, what you actually have to do is you have to ask, what have you say about my services that it sucks? What do you like and not like about this particular service that I'm actually presenting to you right now? Because what you're doing here is you're getting the gift from one person to be able to help you communicate to the millions or the thousands or the hundreds of others who may have the same opinion as them, but you will not have a chance to talk one-on-one, to debate, to convince, to argue with, right? So that's really the intention here. And actually, you'll see this in the UK government, but you'll also see this in the other government that I'm going to be highlighting on one of the reasons why they are number one. The last appetizer I would like to say is that in a project, when your project management office, your project managers, and your architecture teams are not best friends, that project is in trouble. So don't put one over the other as a constructive equal pool from each of the interests that the architecture team and the project teams have will ensure the projects will succeed. Because one is looking at the big picture, one is looking at the future state and the standards to govern, while one is looking at the most efficient way to deliver the goals at scope, quality, and time. So, of course, requirements need to be validated against the architecture. So if there's no architecture, what are you going to validate requirements on? You'll just keep on saying yes to everything. And the architecture needs to be accepted by the decision makers. Changes also from internal and external forces need to be vetted by both the architecture and the project teams, the project boards of the teams. And solution architecture need to flow to the project teams and vice versa via our mechanisms, feedback mechanisms. So I hope those three frameworks that I thought were going to be very useful in your journey towards transformation is going to help a lot. Now let's go to the world's #1 digital governments. Before I continue, a quick word about the rankings. So the United Nations have been conducting the Government E-Development Index since 2001. And they send out a survey every 2 years to all member states. The last rankings was in 2018, and we expect the next result to be published in the next few weeks. All 193 members of the United Nations are delivering some form of online presence for their people since 2014. And let me explain what the 3 areas here are. So OSI, or Online Service Index, is one of the criteria. And they look at the availability and use of these online channels by the citizens to get services from the government. Aside from the national portal and e-services and e-participation, they also look at the online services portal of education, labor, social services, health, finance, and the environment. The second one is the Telco Infrastructure Index. And this is really about the percentage of the population that is connected to the internet. And the third one is the capability of the country with regards to the talent supply in terms of their ability to produce, create, and harness technology. So they look at years of schooling, they look at enrollment, and expected years of education. So for sure, the K-12 that we actually implemented a couple of years ago helped to propel us higher in this EGDI survey. So let's start with our story from 2012. In 2012, South Korea was #1. And actually, in 2014, they were still #1 in the world. South Korea's journey started in 1987 when they established their enterprise architecture through the law of IT and service promotion. They joined this open group organization in 2001. And since then, started forming their architecture work. These were the challenges that they encountered at the beginning. There were barriers between government agencies. There was a strong need for a unified government platform to interact with the people, because the current existing multiple platforms that they have are causing inconvenience to a lot of their citizens. There was also competition among governments for e-government system investment. And then there was also difficulty in sharing data, sharing services. At the beginning, also, South Korea encountered a lack of understanding of EA and the low level of capability that they have, both at the human level, at the resource, and at the organizational level. So they were against. Initially, they were against. No, we don't agree creating an overall enterprise architecture. And so what they did as a solution to that one is they linked the quality improvement programs of the country and ensured through countless infinite number of communication to the people to drive the behavior that they wanted. So they set the right directions and they created artifacts. And by 2005, they were able to mandate that all agencies adopt Korea's EA plan, and they started to build the systemic implementation of IT strategies. Because now, suddenly, their work was guided by the National IT Strategy Plan, and it prevented a lot of overlaps, multiple systems of the same functionalities being developed by the agencies. By 2008, Korea formally launched its enterprise architecture, and they deployed the reference models, their technical platforms, and interoperability platforms to standardize their services that eventually made them the world's #1 3 years until 6 years later. They also formed a government enterprise architecture portal. They spent around $6 million for 2 years. And what that allowed for is they basically asked all the agencies, please go there and register all of your systems to us. And as we now have all of your systems in the whole government, we will pick and choose which one can be scaled, which one can be reused by the other agencies, so that we prevent creation of multiple similar things in the government. Example of what they did here is before, to complete an international trade process, it took them 4 weeks and 75 different stages. And after they did all of this, from 4 weeks down to 1 week, from 75 stages to 15 stages. In addition, this one e-government for the people mantra resulted in about 85% adoption of all Koreans to their government portal, which was in 2012 the highest in the world. They were able to drive around $240 million savings from 2009 to 2011. And since then, no, about close to 5,000 public officials have traveled to Korea to get training on what Korea did in this enterprise architecture process. And as a matter of fact, Korea has now actually been selling some of the services and the e-platforms that they've built to other governments as well. So it became even a profit-making, a revenue-making agenda for the Korean government. Now they're actually working towards better adoption of IoT, big data, AI, mobile, and cloud nodes because they're already at that level. Interesting, no? So close to our borders, lots to learn from Korea. I know that they're already working now with our Philippine DICT. Let's further move our story to the next 2 years, 2016. By 2016, the UK government was declared #1 in the world. And their initial direction, now let's look back at the story for this one. Years before this, they tapped one of their country's #1 leading website owner. I think it was for a travel, no, a website for travel. And she did a study and she came back with 2 key recommendations. #1, get an executive director for digital. #2 is start creating your digital services from small pilots first, and then scale it later on. So they created they tapped the government digital service, which was a cabinet office of the UK, to help the other agencies through platform standards and digital services. Here's now in the screenshot, no, the government website that they've created. From the get-go, their intention from the beginning was to build great services that people want to use. And how to do that? They made sure that they created content, not pages, and they made sure that they have data over technology. On the people side, they created an informal work group inside various agencies to share and learn and establish standards. These communities of practice of developers, researchers, designers, policymakers were tapped to build the skills needed for the work. And then they also helped in hiring the staff of those agencies to make sure that they were the right people, and then brought them in to the GDS organization to even learn, no, as an intern, to learn their culture. They followed agile methods of development, and they actually acknowledged that their biggest challenge here was, how do I transform the process or the service? Because it's not just a website change, it's actually looking at the organization as well and getting them trained and used to the new way of doing things. On the process side, they actually built standards to be followed, and although they did not mandate the following of that standard at the beginning, when they started getting progress, that's when they started mandating it. They prioritize from a technology perspective. So here on the screen, you will see the service standard. And for those who will get access to this deck, there's a link at the bottom that actually shows details, no, about the service standards that they created that has helped them to actually create the gov.uk that it is today. They focus initially on payments, verification, and notification. So that really tells us payments is going to be very important for the Philippines also. The verification or the national ID is going to be very, very critical for us as well. And the notification in terms of informing people, no, and making sure that everyone actually has the right emails addresses as well. So what happened to the UK government? Here's a story. A British friend of mine needed a new passport because he's in China. I think he needs a new passport. It's about to expire. So he went to the gov.uk, logged in, requested for a new passport, paid using his credit card. 20 minutes, stops, and in about 2 weeks, he got mailed to him his new passport in Asia. My insight here is that the early initiatives of the UK digitalization plan didn't seem to have an overarching or a detailed end-to-end architecture, much like what South Korea had, yet they still succeeded. And so what I believe made the difference is, #1, their people's outlook on the use of technology was already very powerful, and already they were expecting the service. No, they were saying, of course, this needs to be here. No, that's minimum. So when it was deployed, they were quick to adopt it. Second, I felt that the other government units within the UK, the local governments, etc., were fast to cooperate and adopt, no, as they did this. And then third was that they hone in on the user insight. Now, similar to what I shared earlier, they called it service assessment, but really it was user research, understanding what the people were really going through to help their communication, and really showing the platform, no, before they went live, to get feedback from people about what they like and didn't like about the service prior to actually going about it. Did I mention they also follow digital mobile first? So everything they did is actually following a mobile first mentality to make sure that it adapted to the fact that all of their citizens are actually on the mobile phone, or most of them are on the mobile phone as well. This initiative generated around 122 billion pesos savings annually for them. And they have high adoption. Almost everyone goes there for their driver's license. Almost everyone, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, go there for their tax filing. So, a lot of things that we can actually learn from the UK government. The third, so let's move forward now to 2018. The number one in 2018 is Denmark. So Denmark has been implementing their digital strategy for about 15 years now. So this is not something that just suddenly came. And some of the things that they did here, they also created an overarching strategy of digital first. Eventually, they made it legally mandatory to use digital for everyone in government. They created performance tracking dashboards for the service managers of each of the government services. And they track both digital and non-digital. So for the tracking dashboards, they captured both the online and the offline. So for example, the driving license renewals, the dashboard shows them the number of digital transactions that are taking place with the data breakdowns of which device, desktop ba yan, mobile, tablet, and they captured user satisfaction as well. And for those that are not online, they had special services to support those also, to make sure that they can cover everybody. They made sure that they've been working on their data, no? So their data, they're proud to say, is high quality of data sets and registries. And they developed interoperability standards as well to make sure that the services actually work from end to end. From a cultural side, they're actually saying, well, our people have good digital competencies already. And from a Danish perspective, collaboration is a mindset. What else did they do? Number one is they focus on user centricity. So similar to what the UK did, focus on what the user need, making sure that the user provides feedback, and also making sure at the heart of it that they safeguard public trust. Second is, inside of this public trust is ensuring the digital safety and security of their information. And as much as possible, because the trust of the government in Denmark is at the lowest level of government, no, the local government units, they try to keep their services at that level as much as possible, so that there's a clear, the trust is actually harnessed and maximized. Third is they have a principle of reusing public data, public sector data, so that amongst the local government and the national government, they're actually cross-sharing information to allow them to operate effectively as a country. They deployed standards, standard data formats, and common IT architectures to drive for this work going forward. So what's the result? They piloted actually this first in Digital Post. So they started with saying, okay, all government letters to citizens has to be now via email, and no more snail mail government letters. And so of course they made sure every citizen had an email address. And when they saw that this had high adoption, they started mandating it for all of their services. And when they did, they got efficiency savings of the upwards of $780 million annually, worth the effort, no? In the ranking of the UN e-Government Development Index, Denmark had 100% score on their online service index because they were mandated. Everyone was there. They're the only ones actually in 2018 who garnered 100% on that. Notice also the huge jumps, no? From 6 years ago, number 16, to 4 years ago, number 9, to now, number 1. Let's see in the next few weeks if they will keep their number 1 status with regards to the work that they did here. So I'm sure you're wondering, no? So where are we? Where are we, the Philippines? In 2018, we are at 75th of 190 plus countries. That puts us above the 50% mark of the world. In 2016, we were number 71. And interestingly, from 2014, we actually increased by 24 points. We jumped countries by 24 countries in 2016. And you know, I believe our opportunity is in Telco Infrastructure Index, because we are actually getting better in terms of our online service index delivery of digital services versus years before. Okay, baba niyo yung kilay niyo. So, to summarize, no, we need to plan well and we need to execute better. That's really the key intention that I wanted to leave you guys, coming from our learnings with other countries. Did you know that the UK GDS, this initial organization of the UK government, had less than 10 people at the start, and they were able to build these services for the whole country? 10 people lang at the start. So really, it's about discipline. It's about frameworks and focus to actually deliver. Here are some of the summary of learnings. Common approaches among the government. Overarching principle. No exception. If there's an exception, go to the highest levels of government or highest levels of authority to get approval to break that principle. There was a whole of system or a whole of government approach, because the enterprise itself had common goals. Everyone was actually, in some cases, mandated to follow it. At the end of the day, we serve our citizens, we serve our constituents, we serve our consumers, we serve our employees. They created a lot of them actually created one-stop platforms, no, or one-stop shop. They created integrations on technology. They created integrations on information securely, and they made sure that they can maximize, especially Korea, right? This submission of all the IT software of all agencies into one government EA platform allowed them to maximize the technology that they have to deploy to the rest of the country. Performance tracking was a key thing as well to make sure that the behaviors are being followed. India government, who published their enterprise architecture plan recently, highlighted this, one of the important elements of a successful transformation. Policy and enforcement was very clearly stated there, no? From legally mandating this to actually mandating the policy about this and making sure that everyone follow. Korea actually was one of those. The UK also did the same later on. Denmark did the same, no, at the beginning. User-centric implementation was the other thing I want to highlight, to make sure that whatever we do, whether we're in government or not, that we have enough of an insight to what our users need, what our users think about the services that we're actually delivering, and not what we think. Because sometimes we, as the ones who create it, manage it, we may have different perspectives already versus what our users, citizens, customers actually want. Operating model, be clear about what are you really trying to do here. It is very, very costly to go from one quadrant to the other. And so you don't want to find your organization suddenly jumping again to another quadrant after 3 or 4 years of very painful journey, no? You want to harness that. You want to keep to that. An example I want to share is 7-Eleven Japan chose very specifically that they're going to go to one particular quadrant and stay there for the rest of their careers, no? For the rest of their company's life. From 1980s when they started that journey till today. And 7-Eleven Japan has been so successful, they bought their parent company, 7-Eleven US, and they now own the second largest sales organization or revenue in terms of revenue in Asia, only second to, I think it's Taobao or Alibaba, one of those big companies in China. And finally, collaboration. Really, this is huge, right? especially for large organizations, this is huge. You need to make sure that everyone's on board. You need to make sure that you have the right skill sets in place to drive that end-to-end transformation, to make sure that that end-to-end transformation actually happens from planning to building it to actually running it, most especially in running it, because that's really where the value gets harnessed. That's really where the promise gets realized and the promise gets fulfilled. So, for the Philippines, our national ID will be critical foundation for all these e-services to be a reality. Imagine never needing to leave your house to transact with SSS, to get your PhilHealth, to get your driver's license from LTO, although it's just an hour now not to get your driver's license, and to even get your new passport. Imagine that, no? All of that are realities that can happen in our future if we all collaborate as well with the people actually helping us to do this. That's it for my side. I hope that I was able to impart good wisdom and good insights to you guys.